Okay, so today I am going to, this is probably good, be talking about mapping the human experience. It sounds really heavy, but I read a couple good books about a month or so ago and just great information, and it really resonated with me. And so I just took a bunch of the different concepts from the different books that I was reading, and I sort of just made a map one day. I sat down and it all came together, and I made this map of what I would call the human experience, I guess human consciousness. Now, I'm sure there's so many different parts of this that I'm missing. So I don't want anyone to think that this is like one comprehensive, like this is the answer to life. It's not at all the answer to life. It is just me making sense of concepts that I learned, putting them together into a map to hopefully help guide you or show you where you can make decisions and interventions in your own life if you feel stuck. So a little bit of information. I hope you can see this. I don't know what it looks like because there's a bunch of I see me, and I'm new to this, so I hope you can see it. That would be a real bummer if you couldn't and I had to do this again. But anyway, so how this works is the yellow are just like general titles, concepts, and then the orange circles are where you can intervene as a human in your own experience. And so I'll explain what that means, but just keep a mental note of that. Okay, so over here on the far left, we have our human being. So that is you, that is me, that is anyone that is a human being. And we have this little brain here. So probably a little too big for the head that I drew, but that's irrelevant. Okay, so we have the human brain. So we all have a brain. There are two parts that have been identified with recent research, two parts or two sections of the brain. So you have your animal brain, which is, it controls your survival programming, your basic biological functions. It ensures your survival. So it's like, the primitive, primal brain region that generates the drives for food, for sex, for oxygen, for water. I like to think of it as kind of the more reactive part of the brain, more of the autopilot. It's irrational. It's not the thinking part of the brain. It's on autopilot. It's there. We've evolved with it. It's found in the base of the brain. There's a couple brain structures that make up the animal brain. I don't have that information right now, but it's at the base of the brain. So then we move over to the second part, which is our conscious brain. And that is up here. That is the prefrontal cortex. That is responsible for reason, for logic, for thinking, for planning. It's what we use to again, reason, logic, think about ourselves in the world, plan our futures, think about the past, reflect. This is what makes us obviously human conscious beings. It's the conscious brain. But I have to do a little bit of research on this, but I think that they're showing that some other species are conscious, like dolphins are one of them, but it's not widely known that there's many other, conscious beings walking around, like tying their shoes and planning their futures. So this is a unique function of the human brain. All right, so the conscious brain then analyzes external events. So we already know that we can reason, we can logic, we can think, we can make sense, we can map. So the conscious brain analyzes external events. So external events are what shape and question our core beliefs and our supported narratives that support those core beliefs. So external events are really anything outside of you. I mean, anything. Like, if you think it's an external event, it probably is. I wrote a couple things down here that influence external events, and by no means are these the only things. This list is not limited. I'm sure there's way more. It's just what I could think of when I was making this map. So that's your experiences, the media, how you were brought up, your childhood, your nurturing, your conditioning, whether that be from society, from school, from your job, relationships, who are your friends, who is your significant other, who do you surround yourself with, your family. So all of these things influence or make up external events. Now, in regards to the orange, because I said orange is what you can influence or change. So you can change, your experiences. You can choose what you experience to some degree. You can choose what media you read, what you scroll, what you see, what news articles you read. And you can choose your relationships. So you can choose who you're around, who you marry, who you're friends with. You can't choose your family. But I suppose you can choose if you want to be around them or not. So this is external events. Okay. So we know the conscious brain is analyzing external events, and we know what influences external events. So let me take a breath, because I feel like I'm talking quickly and my body is revving up because of that. So I get ramped up and then I just want to talk very fast. Okay. So this is a stoic concept up here. Events that we have full control over. So we have a couple, okay, let me back up. There are many different types of external events. 3 here that I've identified based on a stoic concept. Now, Stoicism is a philosophy discipline. There's many different schools of philosophy. Stoicism is one of them. And I'm going to link the books that I got all of this information from in the description. So we have events that we have full control over. So it's pretty limited what we have full control over. But for example, it's choosing our goals, our goal setting. Okay. We have events that we experience in life that we have some control over. So that would be like your ability to win a tennis match. You have events that you have no control over. And that would be like, is the sun going to rise tomorrow? Is a meteor going to crash into Earth? So if we look back at these 3 types of events, these first 2, the ones that we have control over and the ones that we have some control over, those events should concern us. We should be concerned because we have either full or some control over that. So we have some say, we have some input, we have some influence over those things. Events that we have no control over should not concern us. We should not, even though way easier said than done, but we should not be concerned, if the sun will rise tomorrow again or not, because we can't do anything about it. So it would just be unnecessary and wasted stress. Okay, so back over here. This is why these two are circled in orange. So in regards to goals, you should be centering your goals around these 2 bubbles because they should concern you. But here's an important piece of information about that, especially when you're considering the events that you have some control over. So I gave the example of winning a tennis match. Now, it wouldn't be as wise to set a goal to win the tennis match because that is not something that you have complete control over. So therefore, you may be setting yourself up to fail in a way. Now, I know we all want to win and we want to advance and we want to shoot high, but what would be more realistic would be to play the best tennis match that you possibly can for yourself, to practice as hard as you can, to do everything that you possibly can to prepare, and then to go play the tennis match the best that you can. That would be a more realistic goal than just saying win the tennis match. So when you're setting your goals, try to think about what you have control over and set your goals appropriately. So that's this up here. Okay, so now moving to this little right-hand section over here. This is kind of a bonus that I found, bonus information, but it was, again, in my Stoicism book, and I felt it was useful and helpful. Okay, so we want things in life as human beings. We want material things, we want internal things, but this is more for external things. So when we want something, we can either be attached to it or we can have a preference. And what the difference between those 2 things are if you're attached to something, your happiness depends on that thing. If you prefer something, you have a preference, but your happiness doesn't depend on that thing. And a good way to tell which one you're falling into based on something. So a good way to tell is to take away that thing. So let's just use an example. So let's just say that you're buying a car, right? And let's say you really want a red car for whatever reason. You want a red car. Now, what if you do a hypothetical visualization of yourself, if you were not able to get that red car, say they only had a blue car, right? How would you feel? So me, probably still a little bit, but a couple of years ago, I was totally like this. If I wanted a red car, I needed that red car. Like, you could not give me a blue car. You could not give me a white car. You could not give me a black car. I needed that red car. It's like my happiness and my well-being was wrapped up in that thing, in getting that thing. I was attached to it. A person that's not attached to the color, maybe they prefer a red car, but if they get a white car, blue car, black car, green car, whatever, it's not the end of the world. They may be a little bit disappointed. Oh, it's a bummer. I really wanted it, but then they can move on. When you're attached to something, it's really hard to move on. So that's just another lens to view external things. Okay. So we're back on external events here. So this is basically everything that's happening around us at all times. Okay. So another Stoic concept, very interesting. The Stoics will say that it's not the things that bug us, or it's not the things that give us problem in life. It's not the external events. It's our judgment here of those external events. So if you hate your job, it's not your job that's the problem. It's your judgment of the job that's the problem, or that's what's causing you discomfort there. So we have our external events and we judge them. We judge them. We tell stories. We give ourselves, whatever story makes sense based on all of the other experiences that we've had in life. And then we either react to that judgment. So a reaction would be an emotional response. Maybe you're angry. Maybe you're sad. Maybe you react in some way, you cry, you throw something, you're whatever it is, you're emotionally reacting to something. Or maybe you're just having a thought based on that judgment. Maybe you're asking a question. Maybe it's, I wonder if I could get a new job, or I wonder what other types of jobs I'm getting. So it doesn't always necessarily need to be an emotion, but there's a reaction and a thought from a judgment. So a judgment is another place where you can intervene. You can observe your judgments. You can sit there, you can take a step back, and you can watch and see what's happening. Sometimes it's hard. It's not always easy. It's easier said than done. It's hard to take a step back and be able to observe yourself, especially when you're sitting here and you're reacting. So it's hard. But it's possible. It takes practice. It's like meditation. So a judgment is a place that you can intervene. You can choose to observe your reactions and your thoughts. But nonetheless, your reactions and your thoughts based on your judgments of external events are what shape and form your internal state. So we're going to come back to this in a second, but that's the core beliefs you hold in life and those narratives to support those core beliefs. So I'm going to come back to that in just a second. So now we're back over here with our conscious brain. Sometimes we have a thought that just arises. I should eat. I should work out. I should call my mom because I haven't talked to her in a while. Or I shouldn't do this, or whatever your thoughts are. We have a thought. And then based on those thoughts, we have a choice or an action. You can act on the thought. You can call your mom. You can choose not to call your mom. You can choose to work out. You can choose to pick up the brownie. You can choose to drink the water. You can do whatever. So you have a choice. Those choices over time compound and form your habits, your daily habits. And now another Stoic concept is that the best way to prepare for the future is to have solid habits in the present, productive habits. Okay, so those habits that you're making, your choices you're making every single day, also shape your internal state. Did I want to say anything else about that? I've just been blowing through this. No, I think I've covered everything so far. Cool. Okay, so your habits shape your internal state. So a couple of examples of this are, let's just say you never work out. Maybe you think you're lazy. Maybe a core belief is that you're lazy and you never work out. You see yourself never working out. So your core belief is that you are lazy. Or maybe I wrote another thing here. Yeah, maybe you've been consistent not eating sugar. And so therefore you feel healthy. So the habit here is you haven't ate sugar for 30 days, let's just say. And then over here, you feel one of your core beliefs is that you are healthy. So these habits are shaping the internal state in that way. If we can kind of move backwards here to external events. Let's say one of your core beliefs are that, yoga pants are the most comfortable thing in the entire world, which that is definitely one of my core beliefs. You can map it back here to maybe you had an external event where you had to wear a suit or something for, a job. It's funny. It's like real. The reason I'm giving you this example because it's real from my own experience. But maybe you had, a job where you had to wear a suit often, and it was just so horribly uncomfortable. You judged it, right? You judged the suit, you judged the experience, and then you had a thought or a reaction to it, which formed this core belief that yoga pants are the most comfortable thing in the world. Or maybe your job is really stressful, and that's a core belief that you hold. You can map it back to maybe you can't stand one of your coworkers and you've had horrible reactions with them. You judge those reactions, you've had a reaction to it, and you believe that your job is stressful. Or maybe chocolate doesn't make you feel good, which is so unfortunate because it is the case for me and I love chocolate. But you can map it back to where maybe you ate chocolate time and time again and stimulated the hell out of you. True story. I don't do well with coffee either. And, you judged the experiences as unpleasant, and you now believe that chocolate is not good for you. So anyway, those are just some examples to kind of lead back here to the internal state. This is your perspective. This is how you make sense of the world. This is how you view the world. This is your perspective of the world. And this is unique to every individual. And this is why I think human beings have such a hard time communicating with one another, because we really struggle to see that every person has a different internal state. We struggle to see that. So this is unique to every person. So now, almost done here, we have truthfulness and lying. So this is your core beliefs. This is how you view the world. This is basically what makes you up as a human being. And we can accurately represent those beliefs, or we can not accurately represent those beliefs. So truthfulness is, as you probably would have guessed it, accurately representing your beliefs to the world. Lying is you believe one thing, so you have your core beliefs, and you intend to share and communicate another thing. So this is what I got. I'm going to read a couple things here. I read Sam Harris's book called Lying. It's more of an essay than a book. It's pretty short, but he made a lot of good points, a lot of good arguments in favor of telling the truth. And Jordan Peterson is an advocate of this as well. Or advocate's a silly word. I don't like that word describing this. He educates on truthfulness as well. But I have a couple things here. So telling the truth leaves us, this is all from Sam Harris's book. I'm going to link the books in the description. So telling the truth leaves us nothing to prepare for. So that's really interesting to me, because if you think about it, at least in my own life, still, I have certain relationships I have to navigate carefully because I know I'm not being fully truthful. And so there's a part of you that constantly feels like you're hiding information or hiding parts of yourself. It's only a fraction of you that you can put forth. And it feels uncomfortable because you always have to make sure and check in on yourself and have that micromanaging going on of your own brain and what you're saying and what you're doing. And it's exhausting. It's just, you don't have to prepare for anything if you're telling the truth. You just show up and you exist and you be. Another thing, telling the truth forces us to confront the truth. So this is willful ignorance. An example of willful ignorance, if you don't confront the truth, you don't have to do anything about it. And a lot of the times that's not always good for us. It's easier to stay willfully ignorant. It's easier to just pretend like something isn't happening. But, when we choose to confront what is actually happening in front of us and, jump into the fire, if you will, at least from my own experience, I find that it's usually way more rewarding and valuable doing that. But it's easier to remain willfully ignorant. Lying, or more so white lies, are a slippery slope. If you allow one, you will allow more. So that's so true. It's like, where do you draw the line with lying, right? Where do you draw the line? It's like, if you justify one, you can justify two, and then five, and then 10, and it just goes on. It's really hard to draw the line. It's a slippery slope. So, truthfulness always wins. It's not easy to tell the truth, though. Lying keeps those you love from accessing reality and honest guidance. Yeah, so Sam Harris talks about this idea of, like, let's say your friend tries on a dress and she's like, does this make me look fat? Or he gave an example from his own life with one of his friends who asked him if he thought he was fat. And if you keep the truth from someone, let's say you do think they're a little overweight, but then you say, oh no, you look good. You keep reality from them. You keep them from accessing information that could maybe change the way that they see themselves more accurately in the world. So Sam Harris's examples of that was, he told his friend, I don't think anyone would ever call you obese, but if I were you, I'd want to lose, I think he said 25 pounds. It was either 15 or 25, I can't remember. And that was the truth. And so now his friend has accurate information from Sam Harris's perspective, and maybe his friend can more accurately view himself and how people see him in the world, and maybe make better decisions, or decisions that he would want to make with real, truthful information. And let's see here. White lies, false encouragement. True. If we withhold information, we are the ones determining what information someone else should have or not, and we become the judge. That's an interesting one. If you withhold information from someone, I don't have a good way to articulate this, but what makes you think you can be the one doing that? Like, why do you think that you're the judge of someone else's information? If someone's asking you an honest question, how is this, or do I look this way, or what do you think of this? What makes you think that you are the best judge of what information that they should have or shouldn't have? And I love this one. When we pretend to not know the truth, we pretend not to be motivated by it. So I can't remember the exact example he gave in his book, but it was something along the lines of, there was a mother her health was deteriorating. I think she had dementia or some other health issue. And her family, her husband in particular, just wanted to pretend that it didn't exist. Like, he didn't want to accept the fact that she was deteriorating and dying. And so the kids sort of followed the lead of their father, because, that's kind of what we do sometimes. And so everybody around her was pretending that she wasn't getting sick and that she wasn't dying. And so how that relates to this quote is pretending not to be motivated by the truth. It's like, you may be losing out on valuable time, valuable experiences with, in that example, your mom. If you want to pretend that your mom isn't dying or your mom isn't deteriorating, and you just want to move on, that like it doesn't exist, then you're not going to be living in reality, and therefore you won't be able to take advantage of the time that you have with her. You'll be missing out on what happens. And so all of a sudden, if you keep pretending that she's not sick and she's not dying, and then boom, she dies, it's like, you're going to be probably traumatized as hell, wondering what the hell happened, where did all the time go? And it's because you were lying to yourself, willfully ignorant the entire time, and you missed that valuable time. Sam Harris does such a better job at articulating that than I just did, but it's the way I see it in my head. And lastly, a commitment to the truth is naturally purifying of error. So that kind of goes back to what I said first with telling the truth leaves us nothing to prepare for. It's just pure. It's a purifying existence. I know it's not always easy to access the truth. It's very hard. It's like you have to go down into the depths. It feels like the depths of yourself to do it. But whenever I can do that, I feel so good and pure and whole and light, and like I have nothing to hide, and it feels right. And so I didn't actually anticipate myself going on a tangent here on the truth, but that's what happened. So another place to intervene, truthfulness here. It's like, I suppose you can intervene by lying as well, but I highlighted truthfulness because I think that's the right thing to always shoot for. And that is yet another place to intervene. So I drew this out kind of on a whim because I read these books, like I said, that just all really resonated. And there's all these different concepts, like, you know, the stoic stuff over here. Let's see, kind of stoic stuff over here, Sam Harris down here. I read this book on binge eating for this, you know, up here, this information up here. And she references a couple other books that were great. So I'm going to link the books here, and I hope that this was helpful or useful in some way. Pay attention to these orange circles, because this is where I'm looking at in my life, how I'm judging things, you know, how I'm looking at what's happening to me. Do I have control over what's happening to me? If not, then it's like, why am I worrying about it? Why am I expending energy worrying about it? When I have thoughts to make good decisions for myself or thoughts to make bad decisions, I try to choose wisely to encourage good habits so I can, you know, prepare myself well for my future. And I always do my best to tell the truth. I always try my best to do that. And we're human beings right here, this little person. We're human beings, and we can only do the best we can do. But I think it's good to have a map or an understanding of what we're doing here, my attempt here, to make sense of it. So, stop share. Did I hope I pressed record. I did. Okay, I just had a moment where I freaked out because I thought I just did that whole thing and I did not press record. That would have been unfortunate. Okay, well, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time.